Okay, well, we'll get started. So thank you for joining us today. Today we're going to talk about a very popular subject, Azure, one of Microsoft's flagship cloud services, a very hot topic for small businesses as well as large. Looking forward to talking to all of you today and helping you get a better understanding of how can Azure be applied to your business today to help you. And why I've decided to focus in on a couple of areas of Azure that I think is targeted primarily for the small business and something they can take advantage of right now. So we'll jump in and get started. I would like to let everybody know that today's webinar is being recorded and will be available by end of day Pacific time. So if you have to leave early or weren't able to attend this session, we will make it available on demand. So a little bit about myself and Vorsight. My name is Aaron Nettles, one of the co-founders of Vorsight Corporation. We're based out of Seattle, Washington, 7 employees. And our primary focus is around helping customers adopt cloud solutions, specifically around Office 365 and Azure. Recently, we launched a new service around complete management as a managed service around Office 365. The areas of focus there are advisory, support, training, security and compliance, migration, and overall user adoption. Our strategy there is to help businesses get the most out of Office 365 by ensuring that they're actually taking advantage of all of the capabilities that Office 365 has available to them. And so Vorsight has extended our overall mission of helping companies come up with a strategy and a migration plan to the cloud, and now looking at helping them do complete management and get the most out of that investment. So today from, someone is joining. Let's see what's being shared. Okay, it looks like somebody is having some trouble with some of the content. If you want to come off of mute, I'm more than happy, maybe I can help you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I probably should have said this at the very beginning. Because I don't have an assistant here with me helping me moderate the chat line or answer emails, if you are having any trouble, then maybe you can follow up with me after the event, as well as any questions you have during the webinar. If you can write those down and hold those until the end, that way I can focus all my attention on the questions, but presenting and going back and forth is a little difficult for me. So just hold your questions. If you're having troubles, maybe follow up with me at the end, and we can make this, we are going to make this webinar available on demand. Okay. So getting back to the agenda, I've kind of looked at some of the attendees, and it looks like we have business users as well as IT professionals, some IT directors on the call today. But there are some terms that we're going to cover. Some of those terms, we'll go through those relatively quickly, as some of you may be familiar with all of those, but some of you may not. So I want to make sure we cover those. We are going to dive into what is Azure at a very high level, and why you should care at a business level. Once again, this webinar is going to focus primarily on how Azure can be used today for the small, medium business, and not from a technical perspective, but really what's the business value that it can bring to your business. We'll talk about some of the common cloud strategies that Vorsight sees with our existing customer base, as well as what the industry. It's interesting how a lot of the strategies that we see working with our vast customer base is actually very similar to what Gartner and some of them are saying. So it's always interesting to see how those align, your customer base, as well as a big outfit like Gartner and how they see the common cloud strategies within businesses. We'll then dive into some of the most common business cases. So, what are the business solutions that businesses are solving with Azure, specifically in the SMB. Well, this one is relatively new, but I felt like I wanted to share with you guys, give you some idea of an Azure quote, kind of comparing that to an on-prem versus a 100% in the cloud, infrastructure in the cloud, and just kind of give you an idea of how I kind of structure quotes and how you may want to look at doing some of your cost comparisons going forward. We'll also dive into steps to take before you migrate. So if you kind of walk away from this webinar and you're thinking this might be a good fit for you, I'm going to give you some prescriptive guidance on some things some steps you can take today to start preparing yourself to migrate maybe that first workload or that first physical or virtual image. And then we'll sum it up with some customer success stories and Q&A. So diving into the terms, if you look to the far right, the blue image, the cloud, I think that speaks for itself at this point. Everybody understands what the cloud is. We can go through definitions all day long. But throughout this presentation, there are some I wouldn't say newer terms, but not terms that not everybody understands. And that is on-premise. Sometimes I'm at events or talking to someone on the phone and I say on-premise and they say, what is that? Why do you keep saying that word? So I just want to throw it out there. On-premise, when we use that term today, we're really talking about pre-cloud. How things were done before the cloud. Everything was bought through, you bought hardware through Dell or HP.com, or you went to Office Max and you set up networks all designed for, inside of your corporate network or inside your data center. But, the whole cloud idea wasn't there. So it's the traditional way of managing and rolling out IT is what we mean when we say on-premise. Hybrid is exactly that. It's a combination. It's an organization or it's a strategy of keeping some of those that traditional infrastructure and management capabilities behind your corporate firewall, doing it the traditional way, but at the same time figuring out what pieces can go to the cloud, but at the same time it's still one big it's one cohesive solution within your business. So it's just a merger of the cloud and the on-premise coming together. That's what we mean by hybrid. So what is Azure? I found this interesting when I was preparing for this presentation. I obviously have all my own definitions and a ton of decks I can look at. We've been doing this since for the past 8 years. We've been focused on helping businesses move to the cloud. And so when I looked at this, I wanted to explain it. I went back to Microsoft's Azure website, and I was amazed at the evolution that Microsoft had made and the simplicity of truly explaining, I agree with, what Azure is. And this actually is taken directly from their homepage, and I really found it perfect, to be honest with you. But a collection of integrated cloud services that developers and IT professionals use to build, deploy, and manage applications through a global network of data centers. I mean, that really speaks to me. And why it speaks to me is because Azure is, to me, it's a technical service, right? It's not designed for a COO or a CEO to go up there and configure and deploy and manage and do cost analysis. They may make a business decision to go there, but it really is. Azure is a platform for developers and IT professionals to build, deploy, and manage applications. I mean, that is really what it's about. And so you kind of have to separate that, and that's what I want to do today is that's what the Azure service is, but how can that apply to your business? Why do you care? And so when you look at below there, I have some bullet points of, the value that it brings to you as a business, not as an IT professional, but, you're getting away from having to make large purchases within your organization. You can essentially rent hardware and infrastructure, and then when you're done with it, return it, kind of like going to a party supply. If you're not going to use it at midnight, maybe you just turn it off and then turn it back on at 6 a.m. Pay as you go. That whole concept of doing infrastructure and purchasing network capacity just wasn't there before. And that's what a business needs to be looking at. How that applies is up to you as the business. What kind of business are you running? But you can scale your business quickly. So maybe you're in a business where you need to bring a website on for some big marketing event, or maybe it's a big partner event that you're holding, and you need to scale up something really quick. It gives you that capability. And at the end of the day, it does lower your overall operating cost. The IT professionals, when they look at this and truly pull back the pieces that it takes to run certain pieces of their business, of the IT portion, there is a cost saving measure here. And I think we kind of just have to throw that out there. I mean, it's a fact, it's there. How you find that is up to you. You can then redirect that cost savings to other areas. And the most important piece is your competition is doing this, right? So at some point, you're losing that competitive advantage by not being able to reinvest those funds in the other area as your competition is probably doubling down on marketing or sales by the redirecting of these cost savings. So something to keep in mind. And over here to the far right, the reason I put this image here, by 2020, 1/3 of all data will live or pass through the cloud. I actually put there for probably a reason you wouldn't guess. It's not there to promote the cloud, to be honest with you. What it's there to do is to promote hybrid. And that is, I don't see a world, and it's becoming more and more clear that most companies are not going to be 100% in the cloud. Right, so kind of coming to grips with that as a business, that you're going to keep some on-prem and some in the cloud, I believe is a reality for some businesses. Some will be able to go 100%, but there's a good stat there, right? 2020, they're talking 1/3 will pass through, but they're not saying 50% or 100%. So continuing our conversation around, what is Azure, I wanted to give you more of that technical breakdown of what area we're going to focus on today, but also giving you an idea of, when you look at Azure, you really can break it up into these 4 components. The family of services, they have a set of services for developer plus app platform, data and analytics, Internet of Things. That's a really fun one these days. And then obviously the cloud infrastructure. And that's what we're going to focus on today. What types of services can you take advantage of today as a small business owner as it relates to cloud infrastructure. But Azure does a lot of things, and just one of those areas is going to be the cloud infrastructure. And that'll be our focus today. So the popular strategies, what are the different types of strategies that businesses are when they sit down and they say, okay, we want to adopt the cloud? Well, there's really kind of 3 personalities out there. There's the personality of, let's take a baby step. Let's maybe move our email. Let's maybe get that file share online. Let's maybe just move the CRM capabilities. But essentially, they take a baby step and instantly they're in a hybrid environment. Whether they realize it or not, they're almost instantaneously connecting something back to this on-premise identity system. And boom, there's your hybrid. So there's that baby step approach, very common, probably will remain very common. There's a little more advanced. They maybe migrated some services a few years ago, and now they're looking at understanding, okay, what pieces are going to permanently stay on premise and which ones really can go to the cloud, and they start getting pretty aggressive with that, a little more advanced. And then I like to look at this experienced and ready to go all in. I see this as very important and real, but I'm also like to talk about it from the standpoint of size of business. It seems very popular amongst smaller organizations, I would say 25 employees and less, but they're more experienced. They've been on the cloud for 4 or 5 years, and they're questioning, why do we still have a server or 2? Why do we still have these 2 or 3 servers here? Can we go all in the cloud at this point? And I'm having some really good conversations with people about that. Okay, so key Azure scenarios for SMB customers. I doubt any of these are going to jump out at you like, wow, I was surprised. And I think that's what it's designed to do. It's really, I think, these 4 pillars have been the most popular SMB search scenarios for probably 24 months at least. So, you look at virtual machine deployment. You have that virtual machine in behind your firewall, or you have that physical server, and you're saying, okay, time to just let's move that image to the cloud. That's very similar. That's very popular these days. Data backup, whether you have an existing backup service or you want to extend, actually either bring a backup process online or you want to extend an existing one, is very popular. Disaster recovery. Primarily see this around businesses that don't have something in place, because historically it's been very complex and it's been very costly. And so the cloud has actually opened up new opportunities within the SMB to actually put very solid, affordable disaster recovery solutions. And this is very popular right now. Website hosting, I wouldn't say I run into this a lot, but I do understand it. I think this depends on your type of business. If you're if you're an e-commerce or one of these web/mobile app companies out there, and you rely on that B2C connection on a regular basis for your revenue, I totally get it. I have friends, companies that they all are using Amazon or Azure to run their business. And I think that's what they mean by web hosting. So it just depends on your type of business. A lot of us other business owners have some sort of web content management system, or we're outsourcing that to a pretty affordable service already. But just keep that in mind. It's up there. It's very popular and very mature. So diving into what an Azure quote, let's say, hey, this looks great. Let's go ahead and let's go with our baby steps. We want to move that first server. So here's a quote that I did for a customer a few weeks ago, and I wanted to share this with you. And the first thing that jumps out at me, and I think is important for this phone call is, and I hear this a lot from IT directors a lot, like when I'm having conversations, they're like, Aaron, it's actually more expensive in Azure. So when you look at this first line item, I totally understand what they're saying when they say that, right? I mean, here is a new server configuration over here on the left. But if you look at the Azure cost on this first line item, $223.66 per month. We then went out and compared this on a website or two, and that same server was $108.33 if you divided the total cost by 12 months, right? So instantly you're like, okay, this is not cheaper. I'm not doing it. I'm just going to buy my hardware and own it. Well, here's the piece that I don't get a lot of conversation with, and I think is absolutely vital. But how do you determine in your business what it costs you if there is a hardware failure with the buy your new hardware? If you buy your own new hardware, if a failure occurs with that hardware, you have to buy new. You have to replace that hardboard, that motherboard, whatever it is. With Azure, there is no additional cost, right? That's something Microsoft's just going to handle for you. Same thing with support to replace that hardware. You're going to need some sort of labor cost associated to replacing that. So you got to make sure you factor that in with the buy new. Backup data to multiple locations in case of disaster. So although this isn't necessarily just a click of a button, it is relatively easy to configure that this new image or server that you put in Azure instantaneously could be backed up to 10 different data centers across the United States, right? I mean, where do you get that type of capability within your own corporate network, right? So that almost instantaneously gives you some sort of disaster recovery, and I don't think we need to go too far into the security as well. But how do you account for that, I think is my point. If you're going to go the new hardware, you need to account for that somehow. Because that's what you get with Azure. And then costs related to cyber threats. This kind of gets into the security, right? This day and age, I mean, especially this last 12 months, it's basically we're now supposed to wake up in the morning and just expect cyber threats, right? So if you're going to put a new piece of hardware behind your firewall, at this point, you have to be thinking, if you don't already have something in place, in the next 12 months, you're going to need some sort of cyber security service running within your organization at this point, right? So I think that's another reason to say, let's let Amazon and Microsoft handle that. So just keep this in mind. Here's 4 bullets. I think there may be more. How do you account for that when you do your cost comparison? So, that's an example of a quote giving you some ideas of ideas of how to do a true cost comparison. But there's also another way to do a total cost of ownership, not necessarily a comparison to on-prem versus in the cloud, but there is a way to say, okay, what if I want to take these 6 servers? I totally get it. I think the cost is the best way to go, but I want to take 6 of these servers and move them all to Azure. Where should you start, right? Where's a good place? So I want to give you maybe some best practice or some guidance to think about when you're ready to make that move after you already agree that the cost is right for your business, or you think the cost is right. You want to go, where do you start? So here's some questions you need to be asking yourself. What servers are ready to go, right? So what servers in your environment, virtual or physical, are ready to go to the cloud? How do you answer that? What servers have dependencies? What applications have dependencies? What is the monthly Azure cost if I move these? And can I get some sort of detailed migration plan or some sort of best practices? So to me, these are easily 5 questions you can look at, figure out how to go answer on your own before you do your migration. So let's dive into those a little more detailed. So there is a service available today, and there's maybe even more out there, but I just focused on one out there that I stumbled on. So we'll dive into how we can answer those questions using this service. So there's a way to create a migration plan and cost analysis through a small setup of a utility, which then gives you a set of data and cost analysis and a migration plan. So basically, you can get all 3 of these things within this tool. And so let's dive into the tool a little bit more, see what you get. So the setup information for this tool, or what's involved in the setup, as you would expect, it's a small agent, runs within your environment for up to 21 days, collects a ton of data related to the CPU, memory, applications, etc., and requires no downtime of your environment. So that's the setup. And then what does the data look like? So after the tool is ran, these are the types of reports that you'll be looking at. It's going to give you a total cost of Azure, and of course it assumes you're going to move everything, right? So it's going to give you this big, huge number, assuming you're going to move everything, which is kind of cool to look at, right? It tells you, here's the number of servers, here's the amount of storage, and here's the network capacity that we were able to detect, and here's what your estimated Azure spend would be if you moved everything. Then what you can do, as you can imagine, is dive into that in more detail. You can say, I'm not going to move all of them, I'm only going to look at these 2, and dive into the 2 servers that you think can get the same information. So, big picture drills down to little picture. The other thing it does is it shows you the dependencies within the applications and the different physical servers or virtual servers, and then eventually gives you a migration plan. So those are the reports it can give you. So like I said, there may be other tools out there. I'm not aware of them, but this is really designed more to kind of get you guys thinking, and then I wanted to give you some idea of what service would be available to you if you really wanted to get going just as soon as possible. So, if you did want to take advantage of our Azure assessment, which would give you access to all of those things we just covered there, It covers installation, the consultation to review the reports and strategize with you guys. Licensing obviously is included for the tool, and you can kind of see the cost breakdown there. That 1 to 10 servers is the $100 per server, and 11 to 20, and so forth. So take the information, do some research. See if this is a good fit for you. If you do want to follow up with myself afterwards, you can follow up at this email address. Or you can actually sign up for the health check at this URL, vorsight.com/Azure Health Check. So we're almost to the end. Looks like we have 6 minutes to make sure we make it. We're easily going to make it there, and then we'll go into Q&A. But yeah, these customer quotes, what I wanted to do was share, once again, the real world impact that Azure is having, not from the technical standpoint. And so I went out and I looked at these quotes, and I thought these quotes really spoke to how Azure is impacting businesses in the world today. And this one, it says, we successfully moved our data center out of our physical building and into a combination of Azure services, reducing the amount of hardware that we have to support and maintain while not removing the application. So, that first part of that quote really speaks to me, because here you have a business saying, look, we leveraged Azure to maybe shrink our data center footprint. But what it really was saving them is they weren't talking about the hardware and the virtual machines and things like that, but they're talking about the overall support and maintenance that those machines were costing them within their data center. That's what I really take away from this quote. And the other piece is that they weren't impacted. They didn't have to deal with removing applications or swapping applications, but everything almost was like a pick it up, move it, and instantaneously remove that support and maintenance headache within their business. And that's what I get from this quote. I thought that was pretty powerful. What we were talking about is delivering a degree of collaboration and visibility unheard of in the oil and gas industry. With sensors, software, and the cloud, these disparate assets can become a single resource. So this one I found interesting, because I think it speaks to more of the artificial intelligence and the data collection capabilities that Azure has. But here you have a business that's saying they're ready to transform a major industry, oil and gas. Giving a customer visibility into what their customers may be thinking, or giving them access into data sets that weren't quite available to them before, right? So if you had 5 or 6 different data sets to collect this data, now you're able to collect all of that into a single view and now make better decisions, and you're making decisions that may actually disrupt or change an entire industry. So, those are some big thinkers, right? And those are the types of things that are being done with Azure, with the cloud, I would say in general. I don't think it's specific to just Azure. And then our last one, actually I think this is the artificial intelligence one. I think I was off a little bit there, but Microsoft Cortana intelligence capabilities are helping us filter the signal from the noise across large data sets. Yeah, this is the one. This is kind of, I understand this quote is, here Microsoft they're using the artificial intelligence capability to filter out, they're crawling the entire internet to understand. Rolls-Royce is crawling the entire internet, trying to understand what their customers are saying, how they better can serve them, how they can bring better products to market. But there's so much noise out there. They need a way to filter out the nonsense from the good feedback so that they can make better decisions to service their customers today and in the future. And they're crawling something as massive as the internet, and they need something powerful but also intelligent to do that. And that's what I get from this quote, which is pretty powerful, from Rolls-Royce. And that's it. That brings us, it looks like 11:58. If you guys want to come off and mute and ask me some questions, more than happy to answer them. If not, you can shoot me an email, follow up with me. We'll make the call available through on demand as well. And shoot away. Let me know if there's anything I can answer. Okay. I will take silence. Let me just check the chat room. Yeah. I will just take the silence as, no one has any immediate questions. Thanks again for joining. Look forward to talking to you guys in the future. And let me know if there's anything I can do. Hope you enjoyed the talk today. Have a good day. Bye.